Okay, we are ready to go. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Topple, and I'm one of the co-founders of ELL Chat Book Club. We are currently reading Boosting Achievement, and this is our final week of this amazing book chat. This week, we are here to discuss parts 3 and 4 from the book. So basically what we do is we get some readers to come together, and we just talk about the book. This is the part where it seems more like a real book club, where we get to talk about our takeaways and what we really learned, things like that. We'll float some questions around, and it's basically just a time to hear some different perspectives about what this reading means to you and what you'll take back to your instructional role. I am a K-5 ELD specialist, so I teach in a pull-out model ELD, and I'm also an adjunct professor at Portland State, so I teach some courses in their ESOL endorsement series. And it was nice to see some connections in part 3 between what Carol wrote and what I'm actually teaching my students. So I have a little bit to share about that. So let's continue our introductions. I'm going to send it over to Carol.
Hey, well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Topple. I am just honored that we're using my book for this book chat, because I've been involved in your book club before. So this is just amazing for me. And this is week 5, and I can't even express how much I've learned. So everybody's perspective, I'm so appreciative of how it's advancing, really rethinking things. And so I appreciate the book club. My background is that I was an elementary teacher, I was a bilingual teacher, I was a special ed teacher, and then an ESL specialist in secondary. So now I teach at a high school, and I teach newcomers, and I teach SIFE, students with interrupted formal education, and other newcomers. And Anna Mattis and I just wrote this book that we're doing for the book club right now. So thank you. It's a lot.
Chris, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chris Tennyson, and I'm from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and I have taught ESL for 18 years in Tennessee, and we are just starting to use the term ELD. But I also teach adjunct at Trevecca Nazarene University, and I teach both in their master's program for those getting endorsement, and then I teach an undergraduate class to regular ed teachers. So I get to form their ideas about what it is to have English learners in their classroom. And that's where I really connected with Carol. I'm like, can I share this? Can I share this? So I was excited.
Yay.
Welcome. We're excited to have you for this week's discussion. Next is Dora.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Dora DeBoer, and I'm from Plano, Texas. Up until last year, I was a bilingual intervention specialist working mostly with K-2 students. And this new school year, I'm going on a special mission. I'm going to be a bilingual 5th grade teacher. So it's been a few years since I was in the classroom. I was a 1st and 2nd grade bilingual teacher. So my students are younger than most of the people participating in the book club. But I am so excited because I feel like I need a different set of tools, or additional tools to the ones that I have in this new role. So that's what drove me to the book. So I am so excited. I feel like I learned so much. I'm still learning. I consider myself a learner. So I'm so excited to be part of it.
Glad you're here. And Sarah.
My name is Sarah Anderson, and I am an ESL teacher in Frisco, Texas for elementary. I have currently had 2 campuses that I work on, but this year I just found out I'm getting a 3rd. And so that'll be a whole new set of fun challenges that I'm sure I'm going to get to just figure my way out of. But currently right now in Frisco, we have pull-out classes, but we're kind of trying to move into inclusion and spend as much time with the kids in their classroom as possible so that we're not disrupting that learning. So I've been enjoying being a part of this book club so far. I'm so glad that I happened to stumble upon it.
We're glad to have you too. And Shaylee.
Hi, I'm Shaylee Santiago from Ames, Iowa. I'm a K-12 ESL instructional coach and teacher on special assignment. Previously, I was a high school ESL teacher, hence my Twitter handle, HSESL teacher. Plus, nobody knows how to spell my name the first time, so I have to go with something easier to remember. And I've been involved in the LChat Book Club for a while now. Really enjoy interacting this time around through the Google Hangouts Live and the Flipgrid and several different tools that we've been using on top of just the regular Twitter chat. So I think it's really cool how we've mashed several different apps together to conversation beyond the tweet.
And before we get into our discussion, I do want to do a little plug for the next book that we're going to read, because what Shaylee said reminded me that our next book is going to be No More Low Expectations for English Learners. And we're collaborating with the Dr. Jana Echevarria of SIOP. She asked if we would use this book because she is donating her royalties to teachers who are learning who are studying in the hopes of becoming bilingual teachers or ELD teachers. And so she really wants to get it out there. And I've read this book twice now, and it's really short. So what we decided was to do a 1 week study of this book rather than we usually take, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. So it's going to be 1 week, kind of compact, but it's only 85 pages from start to finish, including the references. So it's definitely a quick read. And I really think that this is pertinent information for teachers who are in service, who are learning how to be teachers, or excuse me, pre-service, not in service. And so what I would love is to have some of our current book club members invite teachers who may not have participated, and also kind of extend from being participants who specifically teach ELLs to perhaps participants who are classroom teachers who don't necessarily have as much expertise for ELLs, because this book is really has a lot of good information and may not seem like new information for teachers who have taught ELLs for years and years, but would be great and very valuable information for classroom teachers who don't have as much experience with ELLs. So just a little plug for that. We're going to use some of those new tools that we've introduced during this round as kind of a one a day for the next round. So it might be, there's Flipgrid on Monday to do reflections, and then with a different question, there's a Padlet on Tuesday. These are not set in stone, but just kind of throwing it out there. We're going to try to do a live Q&A with Dr. Echevarria, and then we're also going to do a book giveaway at the end for people who have participated in all 5 days. So just some kind of new and fun, exciting things, but it's going to be more compact because it is a shorter text. So hopefully we'll have a lot of returning participants, and then I'm hoping that participants can also invite teacher friends or colleagues that they know to kind of have some fresh, I don't want to say fresh meat, but fresh perspective. Because, like I said, this book is really something that would be valuable for people who aren't ELL experts. And I think that we have a lot of ELL expertise among our participants because it's the ELL Chat Book Club, but it would be great to expand that network in our PLN. So as soon as this book chat is officially over, I'm going to really start promoting that so that we can get people excited, because I understand that once everyone goes back to school, participation can kind of wane a little bit and everyone's really busy. So that will take place, I forget the exact dates, but I believe it's the 3rd week in September. So we really want to make sure that we get a lot of active participation because it will be a good discussion. So going back to boosting achievement, we had our part 3 was about accelerating language development, which included some information about what teachers should know about language development. And as I said before, I was making some good connections between the course I teach at PSU about kind of that difference between what is language learning and what is language acquisition, because that's kind of a huge umbrella that we teach. And I kind of have a funny story about it related to Twitter. I had posted something that I had done in my classroom around vocabulary and how I was having students make connections between vocabulary words. And a gentleman, I don't remember his name, but I won't name him because I don't want to call him out, but he made a comment that was kind of negative about what I had posted. And I've had so much positivity come from Twitter, and I've never had anybody be critical or negative around my posts. And so it kind of shook me a little bit, and I started tweeting a response, and then I kind of decided to really go the high route and ask really where his perspective was coming from. And he proceeded to tweet and tweet and tweet. And really what came out of it was that he felt like Stephen Krashen is completely bogus, and that you should not ask, you should not ask early beginner students to really construct their own language, that everything that beginner speakers should be using should be language that is given to them. And essentially critical thinking should be absent from that. And I thought that was so interesting, because Stephen Krashen is really integral to a lot of the ideas that I personally use. But just so that difference between, I mean, the way that I teach it, learning and acquisition are two different things, but they're both essential to good instruction. And the idea that you could think that acquisition piece is not legitimate really surprised me. But what I'm curious to know is kind of how, whether you're in the classroom or whether you're coaching other teachers, how you find that balance between learning and acquisition so that students are getting that explicit instruction, but also getting lots and lots of opportunities to authentically create language and engage. So does anybody have kind of examples from their classroom about how they forge that balance between learning and acquisition?
Well, I have actually, when I facilitated ELD trainings from a program that my district uses, when we go over this subject, I put myself as an example, because I learned English back home. I'm originally from Peru, and I learned English all throughout my school, grade school and high school. But it was 1 hour every day, and it was very structured, and it was grammar based. It was worksheets in a book. So I learned English. And then when I came to the States for the first time, I could read, I could understand, I could communicate. But when I came to the States for the first time, and I was in situations where I had to really communicate with others, or express a need, or express something, it took me a while to get my ears tuned to. Well, first of all, I came to New York. I went to New York for the first time, so it was a little difficult to pick up the accent. And then I moved to Texas, so that was a different accent to kind of get used to. So I put myself there as an example, because I learned English. I knew the grammar rules, but at the moment of communicating for real purpose and for in real context, it took me a little time to really produce and not have this moment where I have to process from one language to the next. And I explained this is exactly what happens to some of our students when you focus just in grammar skills in isolation, and you don't give them the opportunity to acquire the language with meaning and for meaningful purposes, or so that's one of the things that we cover when we train our teachers at my district.
And I love that you can bring your experience as a language learner to your role as a teacher, to say, this is what I went through, and this is how it did, it did help me, or how it didn't help me. Right. And then use that to inform your own teaching. That's great.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. I would like to say that I use a lot of writing in response to reading, so that after we've read something, which is the learning of the language, learning how to read those words and such, they have to craft their own responses. And so they have to take what they've learned and acquired and then create their own responses. And I'm excited about Flipgrid because I want them to actually record themselves. So I'm excited to learn about that. But in language production or that acquisition, actually putting it all together, one of the most important things is we can't get all caught up in the grammar. We can't get caught up in, is it right or is it wrong? They have to just put that language out there so that we can then help them craft it. And I think that and make our students not be afraid to use what they know. So
I think that correct piece is really important, and that's something else that we talk about in the course I teach, that there's different types of corrections, and there are times when you do want to make a student aware of what went wrong, but there are also times when you want to let them talk and think and not have that affective filter go up because you're like, oh wait, that and correcting them. And so that's something also that is great to learn, is when and when not to. And I thought that Carol did a great job of repeating about the affective filter and addressing how to make sure that you are keeping that low by making the classroom feel safe, and also by having students engage in choral reading and things like that, so that they're not feeling on the spot, because that's a huge way that will cause students to shut down if they don't feel comfortable and they feel like they're being called out and they don't quite know. So that choral reading piece, and also Chris was talking about writing the activity. I don't remember what it was called, but the writing activity for the shared paragraph, where it's we'll write one reason or response that they know, and then they'll collaborate with a partner to talk and find out what the partner felt or remembered, and then add that together. And that's a great way to make sure that they're kind of expanding their content knowledge, but then also that they're able to put that together into a cohesive paragraph with that academic language embedded, because Carol put that out as a support, which is also great. Anything else? Any other thoughts about language learning versus acquisition and how you balance that? Shaylee?
Yeah, I'll just chime in to say, from the secondary perspective, I think we've been really heavy on the learning, the formal classroom setting structure. And I don't know, my perspective is perhaps at elementary that's not quite the case, but I'm always looking for ways to give my students more opportunities to practice using the language, whether that's academic conversations or discussion, reading and reading and responding. So I think that part that goes more to the acquisition side is something that we've not done a good job of including, and maybe that's why, kind of like Dora was saying, you studied English for all these many years, and then you are actually trying to use the language and you struggle. And that's me with Spanish. I took it in high school. They asked me to speak in complete sentences in Spanish today, and I really struggled because it was that formal study and not a lot of practice that is more natural acquisition. That's, like how a child is learning the language.
Yeah.
It's very representative of how foreign language classes are in high school. I mean, that was my experience learning Spanish, that every year the teacher would start by saying, this is Spanish, I'm only going to speak in Spanish. And then they proceeded to talk about Spanish in English. And all we did is conjugate verbs and learn vocabulary. And we never, I truly don't remember, aside from memorizing a few songs, having to ever turn to a partner and talk or converse in Spanish. So the difference is that, well, then I didn't have to go to the grocery store and use Spanish, or go to the library and use Spanish, or go to another classroom and use Spanish. But our students, our psych students, are coming and they need a different avenue of instruction, because they need to use the language in all of their classes and in living in this country now. So it's kind of, the stakes are a little bit higher, that they can't just have that learning about the language and never needing to use it, because for authentic purposes, they absolutely do. And we don't want them.
And the big payoff there is that when you immerse yourself, I guess, in the language in authentic ways, and you're using it, there's some purpose to using it. It's great to turn and talk, but I'm finding even more bang for my buck when I'm not the audience. It's not for me, it's for something in the real world that they're using the language. They're helping solve a problem, or they're going to communicate with a visitor or someone outside of our class. And it's a real, Krashen talks about, you get into this when it's compelling. He's talking more about input, but it's so compelling that you forget that you're even in the second language. You're more interested in what the issue is or the topic. And that's when all that, I think, starts coming, and the grammar and stuff, you acquire that easier in that as well. What were you going to say, Chris? Sorry.
That's okay. I'm an interrupter. When kids play sports, they have to learn that language. Like almost all my students, regardless of where they come from, want to play soccer. Well, then they have to learn to communicate in English, and so they really learn a lot. I'm sure we've all seen that, where that sports, whatever they're playing. So that's the purpose. So. Yeah.
Actually, you just made me think of a really great analogy that if you take somebody learning a sport, they do a lot of skill practice, but they also have to practice playing. You don't just teach them the skills, like here, shoot the basketball, shoot the basketball, shoot the basketball, and then all of a sudden you put them in the game and they've never practiced it. You can't expect them to win. You have to teach them the skills, which is like that direct instruction, but then you also have to let them scrimmage and kind of see how they put it all together in order to be ready for the game. So that's a good analogy.
That is a great analogy.
That is a perfect analogy. Nancy Motley did one at Virtuelle where she talks about a bike, and when you're teaching someone to ride a bike, you don't ride it in front of them and say, "Aren't I great?" Here's your bike and leave. You don't do that. You have them practice. You hold it. You scaffold. You hold the bike and hold the bike and hold the bike until you don't need to hold the bike for them anymore. And that's what we're doing, I think, with helping them use it or at least understand it.
I'm reading also, you know how I read 7 books. The other book I'm reading is Marzano's book about engagement, and it really parallels about, he has these questions. I wish I had it with me, but it's upstairs. The first question is asking, how do I feel? And that's from the student perspective, that they need to feel safe and they need to be comfortable. And then another one is this important? And they need to know that there's something to it. Why am I filling out worksheet after worksheet to make sure that I know to add ed to past tense verbs versus who is going to hear my message, like Carol said, connecting with real audiences. And that's so important because that is compelling. And he also talks about something that made me connect to Zaretta Hammond's book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, that when there's something missing and students have to like kind of figure out the puzzle or the missing piece, that's really compelling, and that just attracts the brain. And that's what Zaretta Hammond says is culturally responsive, because that's that neuroscience. That it's not this culture or that culture, it's the brain, it's the science of the brain. But those conversations where you structure a conversation so that one student needs to get, they call it the information gap. That's what
Marzano.
Jeff Weyers calls it.
Oh, George.
Yeah. Or that's where I've heard it from, that I don't have all of the message, that I need to actually converse with somebody else to get something to complete the conversation. So it's not just, I'm going to tell you my sentence and then you tell me your sentence and we've had a conversation. It's, I negotiate with you in order to find some missing piece that makes my portion complete. And that's also compelling for, actual conversation versus just kind of that parallel, I talk, you talk, but we didn't truly have to listen to each other or interact. And that I see that a lot in kindergarten when we've been co-teaching, and we work a lot with Precision Partners, and we have them each say their piece, but I really want to start working this year on building that conversation and not just the back and forth.
It's tricky because I have had pushback, and people, like, if you look at the 4th part of the book, there's a lot of activity in there that doesn't seem authentic, right? And it's not authentic. It's because these sight kiddos and even second language learners need foundations of literacy. They need phonological awareness, and they need sight word recognition. And I think part of the problem is that people go back to, well, do I give them flashcards or do we do the ABCs? And so the things that I show in that 4th part of the book that don't seem authentic, there's choral reading, there's shared writing, there's tracking print, all of that I feel like really has to be done with grade level, high interest, compelling text so that it's not boring, first of all, and the kids need to understand why you're doing it. And if they get a chance to practice, I know that's not authentic. People tell me all the time, that's not authentic. But the students say they really like the practice before I ask them to authentically use the language with each other. It's like the whole riding the bike thing. Like if they feel like it helps, I don't care what the research says. If they feel like saying circumference of circles and saying the sentence frame all together where no one can hear me, lowers their affective filter before I ask them, then we're going to just keep doing that. And we balance, constantly shifting back and forth between, we're going to practice it. Okay, now go try to use it. Or we're going to try to understand each other, you know, back and forth and back and forth.
But that's
and it seems to be
learning comes in, because you can't just expect them to engage in conversations. Here's your topic, go have a conversation. They need that scaffolding and they need that support in order to be able to access the grade level content and to be able to kind of learn how to negotiate these reading and writing skills. So it has to be that balance, like you said, kind of those scaffolded activities and then opportunities to really authentically practice it and use it. Like in some of your examples where a visitor came and students had to stand up there and ask their question, or
but they didn't have to. They all wanted to. Yeah. That's what was so great.
Yeah,
that was so great. It's that compelling reason to do it. Nobody's ever made to. That's another thing I get a lot of pushback is no forced output. Quit forcing them. I'm like, I don't force anybody to do anything. We do everything all together.
But
and then when they're ready, they do.
It's truly an example of knowing your audience, because I remember reading Teach Like a Champion, and Doug Lemov is no opt out. Everybody has to do this, and cold call and all those things. And he's backing that with research and saying that this is what will elevate your students' performance. Yet you have to be respectful of your audience and know that for some students, that is not going to work. The pick a stick and it's you, tell me your answer, and calling them out is going to raise that affective filter. So it's balancing which students you're really working with and knowing, even if it's research-based, what strategies are just not going to be effective in this point in time for those students.
Carol, I think you touched on a really important thing with pre-literacy skills. I have an early childhood background, and so I think you can't dismiss all of that pre-literacy skills. We have to teach phonemic awareness and we have to teach letter recognition and that kind of stuff. But if you give them a purpose, like what you're saying, because that author was coming to visit, or you give them a purpose. I did when you do the learning and they have to do a project with it, we collected Nike shoes one year and I sent them off to Nike and they recycled them. And because my students were really engaged in doing that and they did that, then when I taught some of that pre-literacy skills to go along with it so they could do their videos, and they had to talk before, they had to go on camera for the school. Do you know what I'm talking about? In the early morning?
Yeah.
It gave meaning to them, but it was still using what you said, unauthentic. But it has to be done. You can't skip those things.
I just feel like there's a way to, the more you explain to the student, this is what phonological awareness is, phonemic awareness, and sight word recognition. I don't think we need to do a whole balanced literacy training with my students. I think they just need to understand those big rocks. You need to understand the sounds of the letters and how they work together. And you need to understand sight words. You need to get as many multiple exposures so that you get as many as you can. They're older learners.
That's right.
Once you tell them that that's why we're tracking the print, then you don't have to do the flashcards and you don't have to do the other, because they're going to be every day, you're going to be in print. And I don't see any reason why we can't use grade level text to do that. If we're reading it aloud and they're tracking for that purpose, and then you stop and have conversations, now we're hitting grade level TEKS. But they're getting, at the same time, it starts to go very quickly, the literacy and the language, because there's no cognitive delay. It's just been lack of opportunity.
You can balance, because when they read independently, they have to have books that are on their level. And so you find that balance of, yes, the grade level text you guys do as a class is whatever, but they have to learn to read independently. And so that's when you pull in those texts that are maybe at a lower level, but at a higher interest. So.
Yeah, but what about native language text? I mean, definitely I want to get them into something they can read independently in English as soon as possible.
We have some, but Tennessee is an English-only state, so we have to be careful with what we do. All our instruction has to be in English. And we can like it or not like it, but I have to find a way to help my students succeed within the rules that I've been given. So.
And so what about when you...
Oh, go ahead, Carol.
Well, I was just going to say that's where language experience approach helped me a lot, where we co-created text based on experiences that we had. every day we have a quick write because we're doing it together. And so they start to compile things that they can read from day one. And then pretty soon, like you said, you can get them into something that's high interest but lower level.
Yeah.
If you're everyday.
You said authentic literature. I'm a huge authentic literature fan. And I do believe in picture books if they're really good quality picture books, because I taught in regular middle school. I use picture books for regular. Yeah. So I think a good picture book is a good picture book, period. So
yeah. Can you share some of the titles
of the literature that I use?
Later, you can tweet it.
Yes, absolutely.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, what about graphic novels and how do they fit into that, like text that's maybe grade level or at least more secondary, not so elementary, or accessible for students?
Yeah. Was that a question? Because yes, I use graphic novels as well. So the boys especially love the graphic novels. Carol, do you use graphic novels?
Yes, we don't have as many as I would like. I went more this year because toward the end of the year we got our hands on some, and the boys really liked them.
I wish I could send you my husband's collection and get it out of our storage. I'd be happy. There's also great sites though, like Newsela, and what's the other one? News in Levels. Is that what it's called?
Yes, I love News in Levels.
I've only ever used Newsela, but those are also great ways to kind of differentiate the level of the text while students are still reading about the same topic. And I know that Newsela offers articles in Spanish too, which it's not every language, but if it could help students whose native language is Spanish, that's also a great resource.
And I think sometimes too, even though if we're in a situation where we have to stay in the target language, and you know about sites like that, or you know that Google Chrome, a right click on Google Chrome will turn any website into so many different languages. And if that's something that you can't use in your classroom, but the students could maybe preview some lessons before their science class, before their social studies class, and I think that helps them come in with some background knowledge. They don't have to learn it, just maybe kind of get an idea about mitosis.
They would have to, for a lot of our SCIFE students, though, they don't have any literacy skills in their first language, so they would have to listen to it. Or we have a lot of Karen out of Thailand. They are, they have no literacy skills in their first language. So.
Yeah, none of my SCIFE kids had any primary literacy. I mean, and then we didn't even try to go down that road because they're already, but there are so many extensions. Chrome will read things out loud to you. The other thing too is volunteers. I was amazed. We had no volunteers, and then we just made a little video that I can share with y'all that tells the community, this is how easy it is. You just, read to our students if you want to help our newcomer students. And we just got flooded with volunteers. And so I don't know, it kind of opened up some other things that they could do outside of class, at lunch, other students, student council, the honor society, different World Affairs Club loves our kids. I mean, it makes sense. So anyway, we're just trying to be creative about how they get support outside of my class time.
I think what I often hear from teachers, I can think of an example of an upper elementary teacher who received a student who was had just moved from Mexico, and she wasn't a SCIFE student, but she was a newcomer. And the perspective of the classroom teacher is just feeling overwhelmed and feeling like, I just have no idea when I'm going at this rapid pace with my kids, how I'm supposed to then help this student. And I think that Valentina's video to me stands out. And I think that every teacher should listen to that, because what was the language she was talking in? Serbian? Remember, Carol?
Serbian.
So she does a video to compare the difference of a teacher giving directions in Serbian just with no visual supports, nothing, and then teaching about making it comprehensible and what comprehensible input truly looks like. And I just feel like that's so powerful, because it's very easy for us to feel overwhelmed with how am I going to do all of these things for the student. But when you put yourself in that student's shoes and you're in a classroom and you don't understand anything that's being said, I mean, you just want to crawl under a rock. That's a horrible feeling. And then when the teacher can do slight things to say, you know, that we're doing this, and pointing and giving realia, and slowing down the pace and repeating the word and pointing again. And yes, it's more on the part of the teacher, but it's so necessary. And it's kind of like we can't even imagine walking in those shoes. I mean, for some language teachers, they have been in those shoes and they get it, but it's not something that everybody just automatically gets. And that was, I feel like I would love to share that. And maybe I'll ask my principal if that can be shared at a staff meeting, or, you know, during our in-service week of, let's just look at this, because it's really powerful. And when you think about what that student feels like, it gives you a little more kind of sensitivity around, you know, it's really not that hard to change this, or maybe doing this will benefit all of the kids, because a lot of those strategies benefit all kids.
Mm-hmm. That really is the gold, is that visuals and slowing your rate of speech a little bit and facing the class and pointing and gesturing, that helps everybody. Not just that one kid. It's critical for that child. But you can do a staff development with adults and nobody has any language issues. And we do this a lot, where I tell them to do an inside-outside circle, but I show a picture of the two circles and which way people are facing. And I say we give them like 20 seconds to get into that. And then you ask the teachers, like, did that help you to have the visual? Well, of course, it helped me. You know, we all got into so why would we not, if whenever it's possible, because everybody benefits from visuals, but we just don't think about it.
And repeated visuals. It reminds me of the workout I was doing this morning, where there's markers and all of this zigzagging, and I couldn't get it. And I had a visual, and I had someone speaking my native language, and I needed to watch it repeatedly in order to just figure it out of how to do it. So repetition is also definitely key.
Sarah, do you do staff development in Frisco, or are you just going in and working with smaller groups of kids, or are you co-teaching? Tell me your role again.
We do sometimes do staff development. We have, John Seitlitz actually comes in and does a lot of our staff development. We had Nancy Motley come in and do the Talk, Read, Talk, Write stuff with us. And so we kind of flip those things to the classroom teachers. So we've been doing a lot of pushes lately with the Talk, Read, Talk, Write, just to get the teachers using it in the classroom. But we just don't have the time to be able to work with students and to coach teachers at the same time. We used to have more time. But we do the best that we can. And so we actually have 3 facilitators now who are able to do more professional development, and they've been using a lot of John's books to, I think, ELLs in Texas, the teacher, what teachers need to know, based off that book.
Good. Okay, I was just curious if anybody does any of those simulations. Like, I know you know what I'm talking about, Sarah, where I know he does it in German. I can't do it in German. But
yeah.
Where you feel like Katie was saying, where you feel like, you know, what it must be like. I don't know.
Krashen has a video like that, where he's in,
like Valentina's.
That in my course, where he does the spiel in German, and then he's drawing a picture, and he just uses it, or he just speaks it first, and then he draws the picture, and when he draws the head, he says those words, and then by the end you know what he's talking about. And it's really incredible that you could hear a language you've never heard before, and you don't understand a single word, and that it does become comprehensible to at least get the general message based on those visuals and how he's motioning and gesturing and slowing down that rate of speech.
Can you share either of those videos, either Krashen's or Valentina's? I think that would be a great thing for me to push out to my content teachers.
Absolutely. You know, on that note, I want to say that Emily Francis has been taking book study notes. You know how we've done these 5 weeks? each week she like gives you the cliff notes, the cheat sheet, like the kids that in class that didn't have to read the book because they know Emily. And she embeds Valentina's video, and I've been doing a blog post also each week to kind of go along with what we're talking about. And so I have Krashen's video in mine. I think with her notes, and we'll still share it right after this. We can tweet it out.
I was gonna say, do you tweet out your links to your blog?
Yeah, and I have a landing page, and I'll tweet that again. And so from that landing page, you can see our Flipgrid and these YouTube videos and all of that. And then there's links to each week, extra resources based on whatever that part of the book was. Because I think y'all are right. I think those opportunities to see and feel, and short videos, you know, those short videos, really, I think our content teachers appreciate that when they're 3 to 5 minutes. And, you know, there's some longer stuff in there, but anything Larry Ferlazzo puts out, that makes sense.
Right. Yes.
It's incredible.
I think it would be great to plan somewhat of a boosting achievement reunion, like maybe after round 7, we come back and kind of have some time to reflect on really what we learned from this book that has kind of come to life in our classrooms. And maybe it's a new STIFE student that you're working with this year and how you've helped that student, or maybe it's just ideas about how you know, you've utilized these strategies and how it's kind of coming to play, or how you've shared it with your staff. I think that would be kind of fun. We'll have to think about, I don't know if it would be in a Hangout format or in maybe a Flipgrid or a different one of those other modes that we've used. But I think that would be really great, so that the learning, you know, it doesn't stop here, it starts here. Because
wow, that's great.
When you read a book and you learn, it's not just about, okay, well, the book, you know, I finished it, last page, done. It's, well, how are you taking that and synthesizing it and becoming a better teacher because of it?
I think I already felt challenged by Carol on this, because I was a little hesitant about having my students make their own rules. Carol, I don't know if you remember that discussion we had on Twitter. And so school starts for us, our students start full-time on Wednesday. And so this week, the next 3 days, I'm going to have both my beginners, which are some STIFE students, and then my advanced class make their rules. And I'm actually going to post them and share them with you on Twitter, because I feel like I need to get out of my own comfort zone. And I think doing has made me get out of my comfort zone. So I've learned a lot, ladies, from everybody that's done everything or posted anything. So
that's a great idea.
I think we should keep it alive, because that's, you know, this is such a valuable resource. I can remember one of my college students approaching me and giving me a scenario, and she talked about her middle school students and how the teacher just gives this assignment, and she was an instructional assistant, and she did not feel like she had any tools to support the students, and they were unmotivated and they were frustrated, and she was frustrated. And now I would say, you have to read this book. It's wonderful.
I can't
give it to your teacher that you're working with as a gift. Because it's nothing that rocket science, but it's just good strategies.
Right. And I give the training and I have all the time. People go, well, I know that. Why didn't I think of that? I was like, I don't know. I didn't think of it either. Until you're like in that situation.
The book is so laid out, user-friendly. Like it's not some textbook. You're reading a textbook, Carol. The way you all laid this out is amazing. And it's easy to just turn to a page and say, try this. And they can just read a couple of things where it's not a textbook-like thing. So I think it was the user-friendliness of the book that I loved.
And also not only for students. I mean, there are so many things that I can see myself using next year. And I also, we have a team at my campus where we call it the LIFT team. It's Language Instruction Focus Team. So what we do is kind of the trainings that we receive, we spread out everything. We go back to the classroom and to the school, and we share what we've learned. So we have like goals. This is going to be the 3rd year that we're doing it. So there are so many things that I'm going to use for this upcoming year. And it blends so well with student voice the other book that I was reading. I just came from the Avid training, so it was just the perfect complement of books: Avid, Boosting Achievement, and Student Voice, and the Talk, Read, Talk, Write. All of those 4 books are just all good strategies, good stuff that benefits not only the SIFE students, but any students, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to thank Anna Mattis and really all of you guys too, because John, like I followed Seidlitz around for a long time before he ever came and saw me teach. So it wasn't a surprise that I'm using 7 steps and I'm using everything. And I, like you guys, I follow Krashen. I'm trying, things come out like the innovators mindset and, you know, those kind of things that there's no reason they shouldn't apply to these kids too. And we start realizing all it is they just have to ramp up their literacy. And if we use these other things, they can ramp it up pretty quickly because they're not young, they're older and they're motivated and they understand the strategies. And so it's really kind of exciting because I think for the longest time, and I was one of those teachers when I first got these kids, not knowing what to do, I was believing in them, but I wasn't helping them with the fastest path from A to Z, right? Because I just wasn't putting all those things together. It just took a few kids showing me how fast they could learn and recording it. When you record it, you really can reflect on what I did as a teacher and they can reflect on what they did. So you'd have to get parent permission, but I'm telling you, it's super motivating to start the year and say, you don't all have to do this, but if anybody would like to document their learning, your learning could inspire the world, like in a real way. That's not even joking around. Our class could show how fast a person can gain literacy and gain language. I mean, yeah, that's a motivated kid because there's purpose, there's real audience. Anyway, it's just something to think about.
And that makes me think of 2 things. So the first thing that I wanted to say about the book that I loved the most was that it was interactive, because it's one thing to read about something, but it's another thing to actually see it in action. So being able to have those QR codes and to be able to see the videos and see exactly how you put those things into practice was my favorite part about the book. I'm a very visual learner myself, and so that really helped me. But the other thing that I was thinking about that when you were talking about authentic audiences, one of my goals for myself last year was to become a Seesaw ambassador. So I've been using Seesaw in my classroom on a daily basis, and my kids are finally starting to realize just how they're, doing their practices and they're putting these things on a place where everybody's seeing it and they're able to comment and start conversations based off of the work that they're sharing with each other. And so that's one of the ways that I've really seen them put their language to good use, because it's highly motivating for them. Plus, they know their parents are going to see it, so they really want to make sure that it's their best work also. And it's a great way to have that kind of home school connection. Parents have just been very supportive, sending me notes saying, thank you so much for allowing us a sneak peek into the classroom. But it's probably been the #1 most highly engaging thing that I've used in my classroom to get my kids to want to share, even those that kind of in their silent period, they're like, well, I want to be able to be a part of this too, and to make my little character talk and then let all my friends see it. And so that would be something that I would definitely recommend if you haven't checked it out already.
You say it was called Seesaw?
Yeah, Seesaw, Seesaw. It's an app, and I have kind of my Seesaw experts in my class who, even the kids that kind of struggle a little bit more with technology, I have 1 or 2 kids that are able to kind of just like teach the others how to use it. So it's very user-friendly. The kids are able to do it themselves, and I'm able to kind of work over here with some kids while they're just all on Seesaw having a big old blast. Plus the fact that one of our goals, or one of the things that we don't really do so well for my campus, is to integrate across campuses. So I actually have all of my campuses on one Seesaw together. So I have one elementary that's able to communicate with another elementary, ask them questions, and they can kind of figure out those kind of things. So definitely something worth looking into.
Did you come across any issues with parents having access?
I did have a couple of parents who I know that they would have been able to, but for whatever reason, they didn't sign up for it. So what I would do, because I'm a little ambitious, I guess, I would just take, like, if they did something particularly spectacular that day, I would take that link and I would send it to the parents because I knew they weren't going to see it otherwise. And so I would just kind of push things out to them to say, see what you're missing over here.
Does your page to your classes? It's not public, right?
It's not public, no. But all the kids are able to see each other's work. That's how I have mine set up. You don't have to necessarily do it that way, but I wanted my kids to be able to converse. And I have siblings, a lot of siblings. So that's highly motivating because they want to go in and see what big brother or little sister's doing. And so I wanted them to be able to have that communication with each other.
That's really interesting because one of the ways that I struggled with Seesaw was that I set it up so that I had first grade, second grade was a different class, third, and the time it took for students to look and see what grade was logged in, determine if it was theirs or not, most often it wasn't, and then they had to log out and scan, was like too much time in my short window. And so having everybody on one would actually alleviate that problem. I never thought of that.
Well, and so what I did for grade levels was I had each grade level was a different icon. So like 5th grade was turtles. So I would tell them, go find another turtle that you haven't, commented on, go look at their work, give them some comments.
So it wasn't individual names.
It was names, but next to each name, there's a little picture that goes with it. So I just sorted the kids that way so that they all each had a different animal dependent on what grade level they were in.
But I love that cross connection because I also have had some siblings, and to have the 4th grade brother be able to comment on his 2nd grade sister's work is really, that would be cool.
Well, I had some families that left for Brazil over the Christmas break. And so we were in school a week while they were in Brazil. And so I would take videos around the classroom. We did like a scavenger hunt in my classroom. And so I made a little elf with my student's face on it. And I hid it in the classroom. And then the kids had to go find where he was using my clues. And I videoed the whole thing. And then mom was able to see it in Brazil. And
cool. That's nice.
So,
that's very neat.
But when parents access it, they only can view their child, or can they view everyone? Just their child? Okay.
Yeah, whoever's tagged in that item. Okay. Usually just their child, unless it's a group project.
Hopefully my iPads are given back to me because there was, I that they're being taken. I had one-on-one, a set of 25, but because the district is looking to upgrade and have one-on-one devices throughout the school, which wasn't the case before. I had done a special project to get them. They're looking to kind of reallocate, but I just selfishly having the devices come and go isn't as convenient as having them just housed in my classroom. So it's going to be some relearning, I guess, of how to utilize the school-wide devices, but we'll see. At least we have them.
I used Seesaw last year also, but I had the same issue because I had different classes. I was providing intervention, so I had different groups. But this year I've heard, I never used it before, I've heard about Blooms, and somebody told me that it was like Remind plus Seesaw together in one, and so you can communicate with the parents, set up your conferences, volunteering, any kind of communication, plus you can also have your online portfolio for your students' work. So I haven't played with it. I opened up on my account, but I haven't explored it yet. So I'm trying to.
Called Blooms?
Blooms with a Z.
Z.
Blooms with a Z, yes. So that might be another resource. Yeah.
So we are kind of approaching an hour now. So I want to go back to what Carol had asked at the beginning that she wanted to make sure we touched on before we wrap up.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that I said before the whole thing was over about those opportunities, not forced output, opportunities for students to use the language the minute they're ready to do that. And so I don't think there's one right way to get there. I've seen different things happening in different classrooms, and kids feel good and kids feel honored, and maybe they don't say anything for the whole first semester. I don't know. Every kid's different, right? So I do think it comes back to relationships. If your kids feel comfortable, everybody's saying this all together before you have to turn and talk and doing a whole lot of that like we do, then by the end of the year, if you're having authentic conversations, I think that's great. But I just think honoring them at grade level is the biggest thing. There's so many, now that we start looking at it this way, there are precious few standardized assessments that we can't hit with these kiddos. In fact, they've had some experiences that will bring the class much higher level thinking and talking about our concepts, because it's not like they haven't been thinking for 15 years. Mm-hmm. They just maybe haven't had our kind of formal education, but we may not survive very well in the kind of education they got, So just honoring them, and foundations of literacy are critical, but I think we can build those very quickly if we give them those opportunities at grade level. That's the fastest way, I think. I don't know. Do y'all have anything to say about that?
I agree.
People look at me like I'm crazy when I say that. Well, I just want to thank you guys so much. You've validated so much of not just my work, but the work that my company does and the work these kids do. Oh my gosh, I'm just so appreciative. And I think that as the year goes on, I think Katie has a great idea to come back in a few months and at least talk about it. I think we're all going to have students that we can say, look at this. Oh my gosh, look at this. And then I'm sure I'm going to have some kiddos to go, I don't know what to do with him. And y'all would help me problem solve that. So thank you for being my PLN, and thank you so much for taking these ideas and making them better.
Well, we want to thank you, Carol, for writing this and also sharing your expertise and also being so active in this discussion, because I think that that's the beauty of this book chat that we have going, is that you can talk to the author and you've put yourself out there as somebody who is also still learning. And you have so much knowledge, but you're not done yet. You're still learning, and you acknowledge that you learn from everyone who participates, which is really kind of a humble and nice approach to it. But it's, I hope that as we move forward, we can continue to choose books that have authors so willing to be so active and, really celebrating what people are learning. I think you're really great at that, is really making each participant feel special and heard and welcome and acknowledged, which is a great part of kind of building this wonderful PLN, is your, I want to say hospitality.
Awesome.
You really are skilled at that. And I think that we've really revolutionized what this book chat is through Round 6.0. And I look forward to really incorporating some of these things in the future, because it's been really kind of unprecedented in participation and kind of commitment to it. And we're in week 5 and people are going back to school, but yet people are still tweeting.
Look, we're here. Yeah. Well, thank you, Katie. Thank you for starting it. And thank you, Ton. And thank you, all of you guys, because I know I said that in the first week and it sounded hokey, that it was like a movement and a changing of a mindset. But I totally believe that. And I do think that there's no way that we can change a mindset of an entire profession about a demographic without honoring all the people out there for what they bring. I can't know everything you guys know, but together, oh my gosh, there's no way you could stop us, right? It's just so exciting. I can't explain it.
And the second part of the movement is now taking this from being a digital Twitter book chat to taking it back to everyone's respective workplaces and really sharing it at that level. So
yes,
not just that we're talking about it, but that we're really doing
Thank you. You're all rock stars, I swear.
Thank you.
Okay,
Well, thanks
we'll see you on
for
Twitter.
joining us, and yeah, keep the chat up. We still have a week to go, so it's not over.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you guys. Okay, bye.
Everyone.
Let's yeah. Okay, thanks. Bye.